Imagine being just 12 years old, traveling with your mother on what should have been a joyful trip, and then suddenly finding yourself alone in the middle of a vast ocean, surrounded by darkness, with no one else alive. This is not a movie, not a legend, but a real event that shook the world in 2009. It is the extraordinary true story of Bahia Bakari, known as the Miracle Girl, the only survivor of Yemenia Flight 626. Bahia Bakari was like any other shy, quiet 12-year-old girl. She lived in France, loved her family, and adored her mother, Aziza. That summer, her mother decided to take her on a trip to the Comoros Islands, a journey meant to reconnect with family and attend a wedding. For Bahia, it was an exciting adventure. She was a little nervous, as many children are when they fly, but she trusted her mother's presence beside her. They boarded Yemenia Flight 626 on June 29, 2009, an Airbus A310 carrying 153 people. Nobody could have predicted that only one of them would live to tell the story. The flight began like many others, calm and uneventful. Passengers settled in, meals were served, and laughter filled the cabin. Bahia and her mother sat together, sharing their meal and talking about the days to come in Comoros. But there were troubling details behind the scenes. Yemenia Airlines had long been criticized for poor safety records. French authorities had even expressed concerns about this airline's aging fleet. But for most passengers, including Bahia and her mother, those warnings were far away. That night, they were simply on their way to see loved ones. As the plane neared its destination, the calm turned to chaos. The approach to Moroni Airport was rough. Strong winds swept across the Indian Ocean. The aircraft shook violently as turbulence intensified. Bahia clutched her mother's hand. Passengers whispered prayers. Some cried out. The pilot attempted to land in the stormy weather, but in the darkness of that night, tragedy struck. In a matter of seconds, everything changed. The plane suddenly went into a dive. Bahia's last memory before blacking out was her mother's voice telling her to hold on tight. The aircraft slammed into the sea with incredible force, breaking apart instantly. In an instant, 152 souls were lost. And then, silence. When Bahia opened her eyes again, she was in the water, alone. The wreckage of the plane floated around her. She was injured, with a broken collarbone and bruises across her body. She could not swim well, and yet, by some miracle, she managed to cling to a piece of debris. She was just a child, adrift in the vast Indian Ocean in the middle of the night. The hours that followed tested the limits of human endurance. The ocean was dark and cold. The waves tossed her around as she clung desperately to the wreckage. She feared sharks, she feared drowning, and she feared never being found. At times, she thought she heard voices in the distance, but when she called out, no one answered. She was completely alone. Yet in her heart, she kept hearing her mother's last words. Hold on tight. That memory became her lifeline. For 9 long hours, Bahia fought to stay alive. Every minute felt endless. She was exhausted, thirsty, and overwhelmed with grief. At just 12 years old, she was facing what most adults could never endure. But the morning light finally brought hope. Local fishermen spotted a small figure floating in the water. At first, they thought it was just wreckage. Then they realized it was a child, alive, clinging to debris. They rushed to her aid, carefully pulling her onto their boat. She was trembling, weak, and barely conscious, but she was alive. Rescuers were stunned. Out of 153 people, Bahia Bakari was the only one who had survived. Doctors in Moroni called it a miracle. News spread across the world, and soon the story of the little girl from France who defied death captured headlines everywhere. The French government quickly arranged for Bahia to be flown back home. Even the French president at the time, Nicolas Sarkozy, sent a private plane to bring her and her family back to France for treatment. Bahia's physical recovery took time, but the emotional wounds ran much deeper. She had lost her mother, the person she loved most, in the crash. At first, she did not even realize the magnitude of what had happened. It was too much for a child to grasp. In the years that followed, Bahia grew stronger. At just 16 years old, she released a memoir titled Moi Bahia, La Miraculée, I Am Bahia, the Miracle Girl. In her book, she shared her experiences, her memories of her mother, and how she found the courage to keep going after such a devastating loss. Her story moved millions, inspiring people across the globe as a symbol of resilience, hope, and survival against impossible odds. Today, Bahia lives a quiet life in France. She doesn't often seek the spotlight, but her name continues to be remembered as the girl who survived when no one else did. Her survival has been studied by experts, admired by rescuers, and celebrated by ordinary people who see in her story a reminder that even in the darkest night, hope can shine through. Bahia Bakari's story is not just about tragedy, it is about the strength of the human spirit. It is about a young girl who refused to let go, who clung to life even when everything around her was gone. Her miracle survival reminds us that life itself is fragile, but also that the will to live can be stronger than the most powerful storm. And so, when we think of survival stories that defy explanation, Bahia's name will always stand out. She was the child who fell from the sky, the girl who held on through the night, and the miracle who lived to tell the world her story.